Good afternoon to you, Sharon. My name is Hetha, H-E-T-H-A, Hannum, H-A-N-N-U-M, Dixon. I was attending Oakwood College, and I went there in 1958. And I am from a family of four. My father was a dentist. He deceased, died when I was 9 years old. I'm the oldest of four children. So after he passed in 1950, my mother was left with four children to raise. And of course, funds were, in the 50s, were not that great. So I was talking to someone at Oakwood, and I cannot remember who it was at this time, and they mentioned to me about Riverside. And I knew about Riverside, the hospital, but I had decided when I was in the 8th grade, I looked at a Message magazine and saw Ramona Young on the front and decided I wanted to be what she was, which was a nurse. It was a beautiful picture of her in her uniform and her cape. And so from that time, I started working toward being a nurse. So when I went to Oakwood, I was in pre-nursing. And they mentioned to me about Riverside having a nursing program, and that maybe if I, was interested, I could come and go to school here. By me being the oldest, we knew when we graduated from high school we were going to college, but everything was going to be done on our own. There was no funds at home. So with believing in God and prayer, I just struck out on my own. I felt like, we could, if God said it, we could do it. So I applied and was accepted in the class of 1959. So I've spent 1 year in pre-nursing at Oakwood, came here August of 1959 and started in the LPN class and graduated 1961 from here at Riverside Hospital. Simultaneously, because I was a member of, I had joined the church when I was about 10 years old. I was a member of University Seventh-day Adventist Church in Knoxville, Tennessee. That's where I'm from, Knoxville. So I just moved my membership. I can't tell you whether it was when I first came or whether I was here about a year, but I moved my membership and joined Riverside.
Who was pastor?
Vandergaard Lindsay. I think that's the way you pronounce it. Vandergaard Lindsay. Elder Simons, Norman Simons.
And
it was hospital and sanatory. Well, Riverside, the church Riverside came out of the fact that you had the Riverside, the hospital, because so many of the workers at Riverside were Seventh-day Adventists, and so it was easier for them to just leave work and come for about an hour and a half to church. And Riverside always stopped services. We were over at about 12 o'clock. That way the doctors and nurses could go back to work. So the church came from the hospital. It was just together. If you worked at Riverside, you usually came. We had, at that time, one other church here in Nashville, and that was Meharry Street, Seventh-day Adventist Church. Because when I first came, I was 19 years old, a student, and was committed to getting through that first year. Nothing was going to stop me from getting through that year. I just made up my mind I could not have any other, because it meant life and death in what I was doing, that I could not have any other interest till I got finished, till I was finished. Well, at that time, I guess for me, the uniqueness was the fact that everybody here was a medical person. There were other people, because there were other people that worked at Riverside. There were secretaries and x-ray technicians, all of that, but they were all part of Riverside. There were, of course, the children and family members of those persons, but it was mostly made up of medical people because you just left work and came over for Sabbath school. Some people came for Sabbath school. Some people came to church. They were not necessarily here all at the same time. There was prayer meeting, and there was AYS. For me, I came from a very small church, so I saw no difference in the activities that they, had. They had activities for children, and it was just the same. It was just, to me, moving from one building to another, because there wasn't a lot of activities anyway for us. Especially, I guess the main thing was dealing with the young people, and Riverside had a lot of young youth at that time.
Would you know that?
Well, I was, but by me being in school, I wasn't as involved as I had been in Knoxville, because at that time my interest was different. I was over the usher board chair for almost 20 years. I think it was about 17 years, 17 to 18 years. It was under Elder Lester. He asked, my children were probably like around, Cheryl was probably 6, so I guess it was maybe in the early 70s. She was born in 62. So it was probably late 60s, early 70s. Well, actually, I gave it up. We moved in this new church, so that was in 95. So it probably was early 70s when I started. Well, in 95, I was co-coordinator with Kenlon Seard of the Le Elegance Cotillion. And we were fortunate enough to do that until 2013. It was, but it was my passion. So, since I had grown up in the church, and I felt that sometimes children, once they became teenagers, they sort of wandered away from the church to do things that other people were doing. Say, for instance, going to like their proms and that kind of thing, their social activities. And I wanted to do something for kids so they would feel better about themselves, so they would have a confidence in themselves. They knew they were as good as anybody else, just that extra oomph that you give to a child, and love that, not that the parents don't love them, but you love them in a different way because you can see things in them that the parent can't see. And I was especially interested in the children that seemed to blend into the woodwork. The child that was quiet on the back row, that necessarily didn't fit in with somebody else, or just didn't. You can tell by their quietness that they needed somebody else. And so it was interesting for me to pull that child out where they would smile and feel as good as everybody else. So 210, I think we had counted in 13.
That's quite a legacy.
Well, for me, I never felt anything but warmth, because you have to remember I was actually attending church with people that I worked with. There were, I had met some of the young people at Riverside, but not Riverside, at Oakwood. So by the conference office and things being here, you would always see ministers and things, just like when you were at Oakwood, you'd see them coming down for meetings and things. So it was sort of just always the same atmosphere. So for me, the church has always been a warm place, and it was family for me. I guess I'm a person that doesn't require a lot from the church, thank God, if that makes any sense. I don't wait for the church to do a lot for me, so not that I'm self-sufficient, so the prayers and the warmth of the members were enough. I would say with every minister, there were some changes. Because everybody's just not the same, but looking back, I guess the greater amount of changes have been in the past 10 years.
Tell me.
Because basically, before that, there was always just the routine of Sabbath school, church, AYS, prayer meeting on Wednesday nights for those who wish to attend. And of course the other activities like the women's groups. Right now that's all I can think of. I'm sure there were others, but yeah, because the rest of it is sort of scheduled the same in all other churches. One thing is the building of the new church. Being able to see that from the beginning and what it took to get it as it is now, and being one of the members that sacrificed their funds to see that it came into being along with the blessing of the Lord. I think that was an awesome undertaking for the members of Riverside.